Okay, we do have quorum, ma'am.
All right, I would like to call to order the Nctd Marketing Service Planning and Business Development Committee meeting for May 31st, 2022. Anthony, can you please call roll?
Yes, ma'am. Board Member Desmond. Board Member McNamara.
Here.
Board Member Rodriguez.
Here.
And Committee Chair Contreras.
Present.
And looks like Supervisor Desmond just joined as well.
Awesome. All right, Anthony, can you please provide a safety brief and review the evacuation procedures?
Yes, ma'am. For those of us here in the building, in event of an emergency, I will dial 911. In the event of an evacuation, please exit the building using the stairs. Do not use the elevator. Once clear of the building, please do not re-enter unless told to do so by emergency personnel. We have fire extinguishers and fire alarms located on each floor of this building. We also have a portable defibrillator and staff on hand trained on CPR procedures. That concludes my safety brief, ma'am.
All righty, and Anthony, do we have any public speakers today?
We do not, ma'am.
All right. So at this time, since we have no public comments, we will be ending the public registration to speak on this item. And it looks like we got 3 items here on the agenda today. Chris Orlando, Chief of Planning, Marketing, and Communications, will review agenda item 1 and will receive an update on customer feedback trends. Do we have any public comments on this item?
We do not, ma'am.
All right. And since we have no public comments at this time, we're ending the public registration to speak on this item. Are there any questions from the committee before we begin? All right, looks like I see none. So we'll go ahead and get started. And if anybody does have any questions, you can raise your hand and we'll go ahead and get the board members' questions at that point. Thanks.
Okay, are we ready to start item 1, Chair?
We are ready.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, thank you, committee members. Thank you for joining us this morning. Our first item is to receive an update on customer feedback trends. So the board receives regular updates regarding our customer feedback, but we wanted to provide a more in-depth look at the feedback we receive from our riders, and then just highlight some trends as we begin to close out the fiscal year and what we've seen this year on all of our modes and system-wide. With me presenting today is our customer service manager, Alicia Pete Watson. So Alicia's on and she'll help provide some more context to some of the numbers you'll see. I will apologize ahead of time. This is a very graph-heavy presentation, and it's probably primarily because we're looking at the trends, and so you'll see some trend lines. But this is information that's been presented to the board previously. We wanted just to show it to you in a bit different way so that you could see, how we're trending in terms of our customer feedback that we receive. So to start, just wanted to provide an overview of our customer service department and what the department provides to the district. So this is our frontline customer service operations. We have 3 offices, customer service offices at Oceanside Transit Center, Vista Transit Center, and Escondido Transit Center. Those offices are staffed with customer service agents. They help with general questions. They sell tickets. They do the ADA and paratransit card distribution. Anything you can think of in terms of customer service, those offices provide. We also have a call center that's available for our customers. The team does trip planning. They take reduced fare applications. There's a fairly hefty lost and found operation. It's actually quite robust. As you can imagine, we do have a lot of items lost and found on the system. And then, provide the front line for taking customer reports, whether those are compliments or complaints or concerns. They are the recipient of those reports. No matter how they come into the district, they all go through the customer service department. And then also providing, this assistance on our rider scheduling guides that we publish twice a year, the Frontline, on making sure those customer-facing collateral materials are appropriate for our customers, and then special event support. So when we have heavy ridership days, like a busy Padres day or other big events, the customer service folks will be out on the platforms helping to assist our customers in getting to where they need to be. Okay, next slide, please, Anthony. So a little bit about how we track customer feedback. So we have a customer relationship management software that tracks all of our customer comments, no matter how they come into the district. They get entered into the CRM platform. Those comments are then tracked from submittal through resolution. So if it's a particular issue that gets raised, that concern is tracked from when it comes in until the response has been submitted to the customer and the issue's been resolved. The way the process flows is when the issue comes in, the customer service team will identify who the subject matter is around the issue. If it's a train operations or if it's bus operations, those individual departments will be tasked to help identify and research the matter, and then response would be provided through the customer service department. In addition to the proactive feedback that we get from customers, we also do a mystery rider program where we each month have mystery riders out, and they have a set questionnaire that they're rating the system, so that we track how we're doing, not only from the feedback we receive from our customers, but also in terms of monitoring through that mystery rider program. The data that comes in is tracked by mode and comment type. You'll see in the presentation, there's some large categories of comment type that help us track where we're seeing particular concerns or issues. This information is provided in your monthly transit operations performance report, or the topper, as we call it. It's a line item in the topper that you see each month, as well as we also provide a quarterly and annual customer service board report. So you'll see those generally are on consent, but they're a more in-depth look with information on each mode that's provided on a quarterly basis. So this presentation is really just meant to give the committee just a little more context about those reports and the information you receive already, and then just look at the fiscal year to date, and to look at the trends that we're seeing in the mode. Next slide, please, Anthony. So this is the first set of graphs, and this is the customer feedback system-wide. So this is across all modes. And just to note, this includes not only comments we receive on the modes themselves, but also just general comments that we may get, whether it be on schedules, on station cleanliness, on security, whatever it might be. This is everything that's coming in. And as you can see, they generally track with ridership. So in the months where we had lower ridership, the comments go down. Fewer riders, fewer comments. That's just generally how they track. And what we look for in these lines is any particular spikes that you might see, which would indicate an acute problem that needs to be addressed. In the upper graph here, these are the compliments. And as you can see, we receive a relatively low number of compliments system-wide. That's just generally how it goes. The feedback tends to come in around concerns rather than compliments. So, and we did, given the low number, if you get a few extra comments in one month, you do see a spike in the comments. So this was someone who made some particularly positive comments in December, and that's why you see that little spike there. But in terms of the concerns, you can see over the course of the year, system-wide, we had a relatively flat number of concerns, with the dip in the middle there, really around our lower ridership months in the winter, which is a seasonality of the service. Alicia, any other context that you'd like to provide on the system-wide totals before we go to the next slide?
No, you've got it.
All right. So next slide, please. So this slide tracks the concern by type. So you'll see that the majority of the concerns we receive are related to the service itself, and those would be bus was late or something related to the service, and then opera related. So those would be interactions that customer had with a bus operator or a train attendant, some of the staff related. And then you see the lesser categories, which we don't receive as many comments around, would be equipment, safety, security, claims or accidents, and then graffiti. And then we did start tracking the COVID-19 specific concerns. And so you can kind of see the trend line there in the darker red, and it has in April a bit of a spike there, which was related to the mask mandate, which is when you see that. One note about these numbers as we walk through, and I'll remind the board of this as we go through. The May 22 numbers are partial numbers because we're not quite at the end of the month yet, and so this is only represents about 3 weeks of May when we pulled the data. So the dip you see there in May is really artificial, and we expect that the trend you see in April to continue in May. We just don't have all the totals yet. So having just closed out the long weekend, we expect the trend that you see as it came into April to be consistent into May. Okay. We'll dive into each of the individual modes now. So we'll start with Breeze. So we receive the most comments on the Breeze service. It's the customer is very engaged, and we get a lot of feedback from Breeze customers. And like the system-wide totals, because this does make up the majority of the comments, it tracks very similarly to the system-wide totals. The bump you see here, again, the May number is partial, so that's why you see the dip there, and you can expect it to either plane out or the trend from April to continue. And these primarily, if we go to the next slide, please, Anthony, primarily are both around operator and service related feedback. So you can see how the trend goes, and as we were having some service cancellations and some other things, that's when you kind of started to see the rise in feedback in the February, May time or March timeframe. Got a little bit better in April as we implemented the service frequency change. So you see the blue line dropped a bit in April, and is trending down, and that would have been a result of the frequency change, which resulted in fewer trip cancellations. And so that's why you see that service related line go down. Alicia, any other comments you want to add to the customer feedback for Breeze?
Not so much. You covered it in that we anticipate May to probably kind of be similar to what April was, but the reporting's not in yet.
So this trend line will kind of continue with what we see in April. Yeah. Okay. Next slide, please. So we received the second most comments on our Lyft program, so we included that here second. You can see from the total concerns graph on the bottom, there's been an upward trend on Lyft concerns. This is primarily due to scheduling and operator shortage. So we've had some capacity constraints on the Lyft program, which has led to delays and longer trips for the Lyft passengers. And so that upward trend you're seeing there in the Lyft comments is a result of those issues we've had on the Lyft service. The board has been briefed on some of the steps we're taking to address these. So this is something that both our bus operations team and our contractor are actively working on and have an active plan in place to address this. So we're hopeful this line can level out at minimum and hopefully go back the other direction. But this is one of the reasons and one of the important things that we track the customer concerns, because it often is a canary in the coal mine for us when there are issues, and helps us identify where there are areas of improvements. This trend, as we started to see it show up in January and early February, was something that we were able to sort of dive in and start addressing. Some of the constraints were not easily solved, in particular the driver shortage, which is contributing to this. But the concerns. And the reason we track the concerns is because it helps us at least identify the issues early and start having some action on them as the concerns are lodged. Any questions before we move to the next? Okay. Next is the lift by type. So this gives you some context as to what the concerns were in lift. Sorry, I forgot we had this one in here. So as you can see, the service related. So these would be related to if a trip was canceled or if a trip took too long, or challenge of scheduling would all fall in the service related. So you can see in that January, February timeframe, we started to see a real uptick in those concerns. And then the operator related ones, track very similarly to those. When you have that friction in the service, it tends to, the service and operator concerns tend to track with each other, just because as there's friction and as things aren't going the right way, it tends to generate more concerns from customers, both in terms of the service itself, but also just in their interactions. And so this just gives you a little more comments. And as you can see, the other complaints on the lift are all at a relatively low level. It's just really trying to work through this operator shortage and the challenges we've been having on the scheduling, which is leading to this uptick in the lift concerns.
And Chris, this is Karina. I do have a question regarding, I know that we're, trying to problem solve and mitigate some of the issues with Lyft, but overall, when it comes to customer feedback, how is it that we're able to generate this data in particular? Is it, I haven't gone on to Nctd to try and do a customer, feedback, whether it's a compliment or concern. Mm-hmm. So is it divided into different boxes of possible issues, or does someone manually take the, whatever phrase the person put and say, oh, this is service related, this is operator related?
Yeah, when they come in, they're triaged by the customer service team and researched, and then they go into the, however they come in. It could be an email to, one of the leadership, or it could be, there's an online form that could be filled out, or it could even be a social media concern. It then gets entered into the customer, the CRM platform, the software. And once it's triaged, it's categorized, and then the subject matter experts contacted, and then it's researched until it's responded to. So the categorization happens, in that entry into the database. Is that anything to add there, Alicia?
You got it. That's correct. Yeah.
Alicia's my backstop. She's helping make sure I get it all right.
Yeah, so, I apologize. I'm having some video issues. So, hi. No, that is correct. It's a manual process that we do at case intake. So our team will read what the feedback is and then make the correct determination for what the issue is. There's an option for them to categorize it.
Okay. So that's probably where the COVID-19 came in, right? That there's people seeing different issues, and that was in a category that we had before. So we had to implement that. Awesome. And I actually have one other question that came up earlier when Chris, you were discussing that we have a lost and found that's pretty robust. But I came across an issue where someone left their cell phone at the Vista Transit Center. And I couldn't find a way to get that entered into the lost and found. I had to actually put it on social media, and then the individual ended up calling their phone, and that was like the best way to connect to that person and get their phone to them. But if someone finds something, at a transit center, what's the best course to get it into a lost and found?
Go ahead, Alicia. I'll let you field that one.
Okay. Yeah. Typically, it depends on the day. Vista, as Chris mentioned, does not have a manned customer service location on the weekends. If it's during the week in the hours of 8 to 5, if it's lost in the station, at the start of the pandemic, we we're not accepting lost items that were found out in the station or at the facilities. That was primarily due to the intake of things from the outside coming in with the pandemic. However, those would typically be turned into a facility worker if they located Bombardier or a bus driver. A lot of times customers will turn items found at our locations to a contractor. So whether that's a Sprinter train attendant, a coaster conductor, or a breeze operator, and they would follow the standard operating procedures from there once that item is turned in.
Okay, so in the case of the transit center where there's kind of like a ticket sales, is that not an appropriate place?
Yeah, absolutely. That would be the first place I would go if that office window was open.
Sure.
I was primarily speaking to outside of those office hours, but yes, if you've lost an item or you found an item, we typically accept them only if they're lost on the modes. But we do occasionally take in items that are found, like I just found this on a bench. Customers, right. We don't have a ton of information though to investigate that when that happens. Mm-hmm. And it is really outside of the standard operating procedures because we can't necessarily investigate that. So
right. I think that's the issue that I ran into, is that I couldn't find anybody to take this phone. And then right. There was a few deputies and I was like, hey, can you help me get this? So it ended up being that, I just carried it with me because someone, they left a precious $20 bill there. And I was like, okay, I'm going to take custody of this phone. And lo and behold, as I was eating breakfast, they gave me a call. So I was able to go return it to them. But so I was just kind of curious because I had never run into that situation, but then I had that situation happen and I wasn't able to get it into the lost and found system. So right. I just wanted to get clarification on that.
Yeah, it's primarily items lost on our modes.
Right. Okay, that makes sense then. Are we looking to open up the intake process for smaller items that are found?
Well, it's not necessarily smaller items. We have closed items at the start of the pandemic to items lost only because there was the risk of bringing outside items in. We weren't clear on what the pandemic really was at the time. So we partnered with our facilities. Typically items that are lost, facilities would turn in. So if a light item was lost at any of our locations at the facilities of stations, they would be turned in by facilities and we would bag them, tag them, and run them through the process. So we can definitely explore opening that back up again if staff feels that the risk level is at an appropriate level for us to start resuming collecting those items from our facilities. We hadn't done it yet, but it is just because there was a spike and an increase in infections again. So,
okay, cool. Yeah, it might be a good idea to take a look at, I know we're still in COVID and there's still a lot of concern. So I was curious to see where that was at in the process. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Sure. Okay, next slide, please, Anthony. So this is the summary for the Sprinter line. As you can see, Sprinter and Coaster, you'll see next, get relatively low level of comments on both those lines. So you can see it's really 5 or under for the Sprinter each month. So it's really a minor level of comments. And generally those on both modes, Sprinter and Coaster, are related to equipment when they do come in. We didn't break those out by complaint type just because given the low level of comments, it's not very meaningful, but generally they're around the equipment. And Anthony, if you can go to the next slide. As you can see, here's the Coaster comments. The spike you see at the end of going into March and April and May those were both really around equipment as well. So there were some air conditioner issues on the coaster and some door issues on the coaster, which led to the increase in comments. Both issues have been addressed, but that's why you see a little bit of a spike in the coaster comments. But again, given the ridership, under 10 comments a month we're receiving on coaster, so relatively low. And these aren't broken out because, again, most of the comments that came in were related to equipment, with a couple other minor ones that happened as well. And that's it. With that, if there's any other questions, that'll be the conclusion of item 2. There's no action on this item. It's just information only for the committee.
Awesome. Do we have any board members that have any questions? All right, I see none. In that case, let's move along. Thank you very much for that presentation. I think it's really important for us to be able to see, these comments, concerns, especially the way that I just learned for the first time how they were categorized. So I think that's pretty awesome. And at this point, Katie Persons, Director of Service Planning, will review agenda item 2, so we can receive the transit agency peer review analysis.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair. Today I'm going to review a summary of Nctd peer review analysis. The data today primarily focuses on Nctd's performance compared to its peers pre-COVID-19. We'll also briefly highlight how Nctd is recovering post-COVID-19 compared to its regional peers. And this information allows us to compare Nctd in a normalized year, but also gives us some insight into where our potential areas for improvement may be. So we typically use this peer analysis alongside other forms of analysis, such as the Deloitte market research study you heard about at the May board meeting, and we use it to highlight where we should focus our broader service strategies. So before we share the results of the peer analysis, I wanted to talk a bit about our methodology and how we select our peer agencies each year. So Nctd, as an FTA grant recipient, is required to submit performance data to the National Transit Database on a monthly and annual basis. This data includes metrics such as revenue hours, revenue miles, ridership, operating expenses, and plenty more. Thousands of agencies report each year, and that gives us a ton of information that we can use for our peer analysis. The FTA also uses that NTD information to apportion funding to transit agencies across the US. Next slide, please. So to determine our peer agencies, we relied on the Urban Integrated National Transit Database tool, which is developed by the Florida Transit Information System. So this tool gives us access to decades worth of NTD data and quickly displays data in table and chart format, and best of all, features an automated peer selection process. So this process is built upon the Transit Cooperative Research Program's peer comparison framework and synthesis, which is also known as TCRP Report 141. So this method and tool quickly considers the modal analysis, urban area population size, screening factors related to an agency's rail and multimodal offerings, and evaluates several peer grouping factors based upon service and area characteristics. So this process then gives us a total likeness score compared to each selected Nctd mode, which we then use to select our peers on a mode level basis. Next slide, please. So a couple of things to note on this analysis. First, Nctd is unique in terms of the number and variety of modes it provides, as well as its ownership and maintenance of a Class 5 railroad. And second, relatively speaking, Nctd service frequencies are a major area for improvement. Only 9% of Breeze routes offer 15-minute frequencies during the peak period. In FY19, which this data will reference, Coaster had significant service gaps, especially in the midday. And finally, Sprinter is the only light rail in the region that does not operate on a minimum of 15-minute headways. Slide, please. So when conducting the 2019 peer review, we evaluated metrics across 4 groupings. That includes service quality, service effectiveness, cost and financial efficiency, and cost effectiveness. And so we'll dive into each of these on a mode level basis, but it's important to note in terms of service quality, we're talking about average headways, average trip length. Service effectiveness includes passenger trips per revenue mile and revenue hour. And then we have two cost efficiency and effectiveness groupings, which includes operating cost per revenue mile and revenue hour and per passenger trip. Next slide, please. So we selected distinct peer groups based upon each Nctd mode. That includes 10 Breeze bus peers based upon their likeness score, which we talked about a few slides ago. Plus we included MTS as a regional peer since they're our southern neighbors. We also included all 5 hybrid rail agencies in the US based upon the unique nature of that specific mode as the Sprinters peer grouping. And then finally, we selected the top 10 commuter rail peers based upon likeness score as the coaster peer group. Slide, please. So this slide shows the selection of Breeze peers across the US, plus where Nctd ranks in terms of service area size on the top right and service area population compared to its peers on the bottom right. And so service area size and service area population are a key element in the selection of peers. So we wanted to show where Nctd ranked in each group. Next slide, please. A quick summary of our results specifically for Breeze. Compared to its peers, Breeze ranked 5th out of 11 in operating expense per revenue mile and per revenue hour, 9th in fare box recovery, 9th in average headways, and 10th in passenger trips per revenue hour. Slide, please. Here we have the location of all hybrid rail operators within the US, which serve as the peer for Sprinter. Peers include systems in Portland, Oakland, Austin, Newark, and Louisville, Texas. Sprinter, next slide, please. Sprinter ranked 1st in passenger trips per revenue mile and revenue hour, 2nd in fare box recovery and operating expense per revenue mile, and last in average headways or service frequency. Next slide, please. And then finally, we have our commuter rail peers throughout the US, which varies significantly in terms of service area size and population on the right there. Next slide, please. Coaster ranked 2nd in operating expense, 5th in fare box recovery, and 10th in average headways in 2019. Next slide, please. So in addition to examining Nctd's peer with similar likeness scores, we also included a brief snapshot of Nctd's COVID-19 recovery compared to peers in the Southern California region. So this table compares Q2 ridership between FY19 and FY 2022 to give us a sense of how we compare to our peers in the region in terms of COVID recovery. And you'll note here there's a column on the likeness score. While we don't have very similar likeness scores, we felt that this was another good way to look at how we're comparing to our peers. Slide, please. And finally, key takeaways. Nctd is unique amongst its peers in terms of multimodal offerings, service area characteristics, and operating and capital budget. Service frequency should be a target for future improvements post-COVID-19, particularly on Breeze and Sprinter services. And finally, based upon the methodology that we used within TCRP Report 141, Nctd's modal peers may change slightly year to year based upon changing service area characteristics and service offerings post-COVID-19. So we felt that this FY19 peer review gives us a really good sense of some areas that we can improve, and we'll also be using these groups of peers to compare how we're recovering from COVID-19 and how maybe our peers are changing relative to us. And with that, I'll pause for questions.
All right, does anybody have any questions? Any board members? I see no questions, but did I hear correctly that we are when we're looking at the sprinter, we're the only one that doesn't have 15-minute headways?
Yes, in the region, we wanted to highlight that compared to like the MTS trolley, for example, sprinter headways are definitely an area for improvement.
Wow. And that's something that we're working on, right? But we need a lot of different partners to put that together. I really hope that we can get to that. The sprinter is just a backbone to our system. And I know I really enjoy writing it. But if we had it every 15 minutes, I think we'd have more people enjoying the sprinter. But thank you so much for that presentation. And do we have any public comments regarding this item?
We do not, ma'am.
Okay. Well, at this time, we are ending the public registration to speak on this item, and it doesn't seem like there's any questions from the committee. But I do want to say that it's really important for us to be able to see how we rank in accordance with our peers in these different groups. And I do look forward to getting to that 15-minute headway. There's no vote required on this item since it's informational only. So we're going to go ahead and move on. Thank you so much for the presentation. Colleen Windsor, Director of Marketing and Communications, will review agenda item 3, which is to receive the FY 2023 Marketing and Communications Plan Overview. All right, you're up.
Good morning, and good morning, committee members. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. I just wanted to give you a highlight of the 2023 Marketing and Communications Plan that will be going to the board in June for consideration and a vote. Can I go to the next slide? So this is just an overview of all the areas of responsibility for the marketing and communications team. Probably the foremost and most important one is the ridership growth, but we are also looking at creating collateral for that growth and for campaigns to educate people on the different services that we have. We deal with service alerts. Our internal communications is also an area of responsibility for our team. We oversee the advertising sales with our contractor Clear Channel to ensure that they are adhering to board policy number 13. We conduct community outreach. We have a fantastic graphic designer on our team who creates much of the collateral pieces that you see. We're also responsible for media relations. That's responding to media requests as well as pushing information out to reporters to share information and educate the public on what was going on with Nctd. And we oversee the volunteer ambassador program, and you can see the rest for yourself. Next slide, please. So our goals for the next fiscal year is to promote the ridership recovery from the pandemic. We are seeing an increase in ridership on all of our modes. We have not hit the pre-pandemic numbers yet. And we really want to take an opportunity because there's a lot of people who have not returned to work yet. And so getting that in their mind that taking transit might be a much better option for them instead of getting back in their car, especially with the gas prices as high as they are now. So we really want to take advantage of that. Enhancing the customer experience, making sure that we are communicating, and I'll get into some details on each of these goals in just a moment, but making sure that they have the most important information right at the tip of their hands. Increasing the outreach and community engagement, as I said earlier, really looking into and diving into how can we internally communicate better and making sure that our staff members become our best ambassadors and they're equipped with the information that they need. Growing our direct revenue and then implementing some marketing process improvements that will just streamline the work that we are doing. Next slide. So our marketing strategy is focusing on where people want to go. And that's not just work, but that's leisure as well. And, when people can dream where they might go and the ease that it could be and the cost efficiency, it gets people thinking instead of just jumping in that car. We want to update the brand voice to be more customer focused, talking about them, and what their needs are. Looking at some specific actions that we can do to improve customer service. We've implemented some new ideas that we're excited about, but we have some new ones that we'll be implementing this next fiscal year. And really taking advantage of that leisure rider, not only visitors coming to the area, but people, so many people are taking staycations, whether it's because of the pandemic as we're coming out of it, or it's just taking advantage of a beautiful area that we have in this region. So really wanting to target those leisure riders, and then building the data-driven information. My boss, Chris Orlando, is on, and we are just so hungry for data-driven direction, if you will. Who are our riders and where are they going and what do they desire, so that we can better communicate and better provide services. And I know Chris unmuted himself, so I can jump in here.
Yeah, so a comment on that last one. So the Deloitte study that the board heard about in May will be the primary tool for this, as well as the Breeze Speed and Reliability project. And as the board heard in the meeting last month, we're about through the Deloitte project to launch on a pretty broad customer survey. And a lot of that data, in fact, all that data will be used to inform the marketing strategy going forward. So the last data, type of survey we have similar to that was done by Sandag in 2015. So we really haven't been working off of, current data and customer feedback information. So the Deloitte study and the customer service survey that they're about to start is really going to help us have a more data-driven approach to our marketing. So this is, a work in progress, but something we think will help us really focus as we try and attract riders back to the system.
I have a quick question regarding that, because the survey is going to be a very important aspect of being able to understand how to grow our ridership and our current ridership and different opportunities. Is this survey going to be multilingual? Is it going to be pushed out in different languages?
It is. Yeah, it is.
Okay. That's really good. I just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Next slide, please. So some goals and initiatives, again, some of the things that we have already started that we're seeing is making a bit of a difference, and some of where our energy will be spent this next fiscal year. We'll continue to promote the Youth Opportunity Pass. A lot of young people are taking advantage of that. But there's a new one called Pronto Extend, and the board will be looking at this program at the June meeting, and it is a program for foster kids who have aged out of the system and providing transit services to them. And you'll hear more about that at your June meeting, but we'll be helping to promote that. The Dump the Pump, that is typically an APTA-driven campaign in June, but because of the high gas prices, we dusted it off and gave it a new face and put it out there to make, again, people consider there is an alternative to paying $5 and $6 gallon, prices of gas. We are working together with the Comic-Con and the San Diego County Fair, providing the Fair Tripper. Nctd Plus promotion, which you have heard about in your past board meetings, will continue to promote that. The rider enhancement, again, is really important because riders want to know that they can depend on the ride that is coming, whether it's a train or a bus. So we have just started pushing out the gonctd.com/now, and that gives real-time information to people wherever they're on, because it's mobile driven, and giving people the information they need. When is my bus coming next? And this is really in response to information that was shared at the last board meeting and some areas of concern, and we heard that. And so we're pretty excited about that. We also separated out, if you didn't know, on our Twitter page, it would include all alerts, but also information about Nctd. And it was very clustered. And so we have separated out alerts specifically to its own Twitter page, and people can easily find information now by just driving it with your hashtag. So if you have, the 101, if you just put a hashtag 101, that information specifically will populate so people can see if the bus is running late or if it's being canceled. So that alert type of information would be found there. We'll be putting out a new rider's guide in July that we're working diligently on. Looking at some internal communication, we're pretty excited about a new website link, which I'll share a little bit more with you in just a little bit. Another important thing that we just started a few months ago, when we are having quarterly meetings with the city public information officers, we have a working group. So it's shared information, not only just telling them and trying to educate PIOs in all of your cities as to the information and the services that in the campaigns and the promotions that we're having, but also receiving information from them. One of the things that we heard was, they have a lot of events. All of your cities have a lot of events, and what a great opportunity to share that information. So we just created an events calendar where we'll be promoting events that our services go to in each of your cities and being able to co-promote that. So we're excited about that opportunity. Conducting school outreach. We just had a workshop with a new number of schools last week, sharing about the tripper information, the school tripper information with them, and how can we better educate and communicate with not only the students, but with their parents as well. So that again is a give and take of information. Looking at increasing our advertising sales, we'll be supporting the naming rights initiative, and then a number of business processes, just a streamline of what we do. Next slide.
So on the business process improvement stuff, before we go on, Colleen, just so as the committee knows, Colleen and I are both under a year, and so we're in the process of standing up the marketing function in a lot of ways. There was an active marketing function prior to our arrival, but we're in the process of building it out. And really wanting to focus on this business process improvement, so that we can, as ridership returns, really focus on targeting those pockets of riders we know we can attract to the system. So that is called out as a goal because it's important that we have a really good infrastructure in place in terms of marketing. So these things that we do every day become programmatic and they happen. And that allows us to focus on some of the bigger initiatives that the board designates or that come across to us. Sorry, Colin, go on.
No, all good. Next slide. So just concentrating on just some of the few areas that we'll be looking at in fiscal 23. The Youth Opportunity Pass, you as board members and committee members have already heard about this opportunity, and it is growing, continuing to grow in popularity, and we'll continue to partner with SANDAG and MTS to ensure that all youth know of this opportunity and can take advantage of it. Next slide. The Where To campaign, again, going back to what our strategy is trying to connect people to where they want to go. It highlights points of interest. It will highlight specific events. And again, it's not just taking transit to work, but it's also for that leisure. And right now we've concentrated this campaign on the coaster because of the expanded service that was kicked off last October, but it will start including Sprinter destinations and Breeze destinations. And so we have a variety of videos that highlight where to, whether it's work or whether it's leisure or whether it's Padres. So we'd like to show you the Padres where to video. And we have all of those materials both in English and Spanish as well.
And the Padres were very kind. They shared some of the graphics and photos you saw there with us. So you'll hear more in a couple slides, but expanding the relationship with the Padres, and so they contributed to that ad, which runs primarily on social media. So
again, rider information, the resources that we can provide to get the latest information into the hands of our customers is the utmost critical. People can go to the website and get schedules and routes. They can find out how to take the bus. The real-time updates through the new go.nctd.com/now. Super important. When is that next bus arriving? When is that next train arriving? And then those Twitter alerts that I talked about earlier. Chris, you want to add anything?
No, go ahead and go to the next slide, please, Anthony. You can see how the Nctd now works. This was a service we had on our site already, so it's something that we've we've had available. It was hard to find on the website, though. Admittedly, it was not in a good place. And if you were trying to look at it on your mobile phone, it was difficult. And so we've created a new page which has the same information, but is much easier to find, and will load in a mobile friendly way, so that if you just go to gonctd.com/now, it'll load this tool up on your phone, and you can pick your route, pick your direction, and pick your stop, and get when the next bus is arriving. It also does Sprinter and Coaster. So if you scroll to the bottom of the list, you'll see Sprinter and Coaster as well. So this is, as the board expressed in the last board meeting, really important information to all our riders. So we wanted just to make it upfront and present for riders. So this was a small change we made, but we think it will have a big impact. All this information that you see here is also available on a mobile app called Transit, which we promote. It provides this real-time information and does some other functions like trip planning, those sorts of things. We also publish this through our content provider Swiftly to Google Maps, to Apple Maps. So all the transit external services, the data you see here is an external feed that they're able to access and provide. So this same information is available through third-party apps, through a data feed. But the production of the /now site was really a simple change, just to make the information we already have available more readily findable and easy to access for our riders. So we're Colleen and team will be promoting this as the go-to place, along with the Twitter _alerts as the places to get current information about the system.
Next slide, please, Anthony. Thank you. So the Padres chain has always been pretty popular. We will continue to promote taking the coaster to the Padres in collaboration with the team and the marketing team there. We have heard again how critical this service is for their fans, because parking and traffic around Petco Park is challenging at best. And they're expecting many sellout games this season. So the great thing is that our expanded coaster service covers most of the game times. We did have to schedule a few of the 699 trains, and those are the trains that depart from Petco, or actually Santa Fe Depot, coming north after the games. But our expanded service has really bolstered the opportunity for Padres fans to take the coaster down. And we'll continue to increase promotional opportunities with onboard experiences as you're going to the game. So get people excited before they even get to Petco Park. And we'll have more on those opportunities, and we'll be sharing that with all of you, and hoping that you will share that information to get people on the train as well. Next slide. So our advertising sales are continuing. We again contract with Clear Channel. We do have a minimum annual guarantee of dollar amounts, and we are tracking as we should on these advertising sales. But we want to dig into it a little bit further to see where else we have opportunities to grow this for the district. Anything you want to add to that, Chris? No? Okay, next slide. So Link, this is our new internal website where we want to take the opportunity to share information again that is pertinent to Nctd staff, so that they are well informed. We just launched this, it's been 3 weeks, 1 month ago, and it has daily articles about information critical and pertinent to Nctd. And it is on every staff member's browser. It comes up first. So we have a kind of an audience that has to look at it, whether they take the time to read it or not. We're hoping, and we'll be getting the analytics from that too. And what kind of articles are they reading? What are staff interested in? Because our staff members are the best ambassadors, as well as our board members, to be able to share information with the public. Next slide. And with that, I'll offer it back up to you to see if you have any questions, and thank you for the opportunity to share what we're doing.
Thank you so much. That was really informative. And I'm really excited to see, our marketing really gear up. I'm excited that, recently when I've been using whatever form of transit and specifically the Breeze bus, I'm seeing a lot of young folks on the bus. I think that there's a great opportunity for them. They're so tech savvy to be able to figure out all these different things and be kind of like leaders in transit to help other folks. So I'm really looking forward to the collaboration and connecting with other organizations that have different leadership groups. I'm thinking about here in the city of Vista and beyond, Vista Community Clinic. They're great partners. They have Poder Popular, which is a great organization, and they've been really successful in different leadership roles. So I think that, I know I had a communication with them and they had some questions about Nctd, but I think they're ready, as are some other groups, to learn more about our public transit and how to make it easier for them and for their friends and family. So I think that there's a lot of opportunity to connect with Vista Community Clinic and other organizations like Universidad Popular out in San Marcos. Yeah, I'm just super excited. And I have one question. I don't see any questions from my fellow board members here, but if you do have a question, let me know. But because we are looking to continue to expand our ridership, and in particular, I'm excited to hear a little bit more about maybe transition age youth with those who have transitioned out of foster care. So I look forward to hearing that in the future. But, do we have like almost like an open day at Nctd where younger folks can learn a little bit more even about career options, kind of like all put it together, almost like a open house fair for Nctd. I just think that there's so much opportunity to be creative with our marketing and also push forward more engagement and let people know more about these resources that we already have. And perhaps, there's a way to involve our youth and our school districts and their families, so that people that have never ridden any Nctd, they're like, hey, this is a great opportunity. They can kind of, find their way and help their students, their children navigate it. And then two, just to be able to understand career pathways too. Right. So I just think that there's like a huge opportunity to really build off of this momentum that we're seeing with new ridership, especially with our youth. But those are all the comments that I have. I don't have any questions, but I really appreciate how much you all are digging deep and, trying to, all of us together can make this really successful. So thank you so much for all your hard work. I don't see any other questions from my board members.
I think, excuse me,
ma'am.
What was that? Oh, I see board member Jim Desmond. Did you have a question? Some comment?
Yeah, well, just more of a comment. And thanks for the presentations and the update, and glad to hear you're working on all this good stuff. Just more of a comment on, a couple of things that kind of stood out to me as a little bit negative is, the dump the pump and car bad, transit good. And maybe that's too harsh of a characterization, but instead of focusing maybe on negatives, it's like, what are the benefits, of riding and the choices, and how much money people can save. If you take the train or the coaster to the Padre game, maybe you can buy 1 or 2 extra ball caps or something, or souvenirs or something like that, and maybe focus on, how much you save, or how much, if you take the coaster from Oceanside down to the ball game, instead of paying for, the gas and parking, you're going to save whatever, $30 or whatever that might be. So more focuses on, people having choice, and maybe those other programs aren't going to be that highlighted, but focus on how much money people can save. And I think that kind of rings truer to somebody to say, hey, if we take the train, I can buy extra food or hot dogs, and I'm going to save this much a month if I take the train instead of driving my car. I think is beneficial in some of these programs. So that's just my comment. Thanks.
Yeah, so thank you, Supervisor Desmond, and you it's a fantastic suggestion, and Colleen's already working on it for you. So we are very close to launching a commute calculator, so you can put in where you're going and the details, and it'll tell you the cost comparisons. So we're hoping to launch that soon on our website. So it'll make just as you described, make it really easy for folks to look and see what their options are, look at the costs and how it compares. So we're a great suggestion. We're working on that, and we should have that. Colleen, when do you think we'll have that ready? Pretty soon, I think was the
Probably in the next 2 weeks.
next 2 weeks. Yeah, so we're real close to getting that done.
As usual, you're way ahead of me. Thanks.
And I know you're all about choice, Supervisor Desmond.
Yeah.
And I probably misspoke about too much about the negative about the car, because those are things that we are promoting, are the benefits, the time benefits, the lifestyle that you have if you're riding the coaster, the time that you get. So yes, point taken.
Thanks.
Awesome. And, while we're talking about cars, I think it's really interesting because we're at this cross point where the average American, the lifetime of their car is, I think it was like 12 and a half years or something like that. So people are really holding on to their cars. I read a little bit about how, the manufacturing of them makes them last longer. So it's a better product, but people are really holding on to their cars for a long time. And some of those reasons being economic, right? It costs a lot to have a car. Then we see this cross section with increase in gas prices, right? I mean, we can only anticipate, so much when it comes to gas prices, but I think that we have a very unique opportunity. And I like what Board Member Desmond said, hey, let's let people know what their real choices are. I know that I like to save money on gas too. And if I can utilize public transit and it's reliable and it's safe, right, then I'm going to do that. And I think we're really striving as an organization to ensure that people have a real cost competitive choice and can get to where they need to go. Do we have any other public comments on this agenda item?
We do not, ma'am.
All right, Anthony. So since we don't have any public comments, I am going to end the public registration to speak on this item. And I don't see any other comments from, let me check. No, I don't see any other comments from the committee. And there's no vote required on this item since it's just informational. With that said, I'll go ahead and lead us out here. The next meeting that we have is our regular board meeting. It's June 16th, 2022 at 2 p.m. And this meeting is now adjourned.